Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Okay. Hi, everyone. Say hi. Let's see. My camera does not seem to be working all that well. It is giving some issues. Hi, Zach. Hello, Derek. Wow, this is nice. Let's see. Yeah, it seemed to be a little bit out of focus here, but we're gonna just go with it because I've been experimenting with how to go about doing this, and I think the next time I'm going to have the green screen behind me, and we're going to do it that way. So I wanted to start out with some. Oh yeah, let's start out with something easy. Let's start out with the Gamera set. So I just got this from Amazon, and yes, it is just as big as everybody's been saying. So let me show it to you here. I got it in an Amazon box. It's one of the heaviest Amazon boxes for that size. So this is the Gamera Blu-ray set. There we go. There we go. And it is big. Oh, see, it's huge. It is unwieldy at times, and it makes the Criterion Godzilla set look small in comparison. But it is huge. It's big. It's wonderful. And I did see a couple of them already. So what we got here is we got this comics collection right here. And then we got, what even is this? Oh, the art. I believe this is the art. Yes. A lot of this art was Matt Frank, I think. At least wasn't the cover art. So here's this. Here's the front of that. That's what that looks like. Then we got that's the back and all sorts of wonderful stuff in here. Then let's see what else. It's huge. So then I'll go to the Blu-rays. Let's get to that now. So here's what the front looks like. And then all the Blu-rays are right in here. There were some people that were saying that they were getting charged by Amazon, but it wasn't shipping. That wasn't the case with me, at least. That they charged my card and then they shipped it like immediately at the same time. So I don't know if I don't know what exactly Amazon was doing, but it worked okay with me. But yeah, isn't this pretty? It's way bigger than I even thought it was going to be. So yeah, it's very impressive. It's very impressive. I like it. I didn't expect it this soon, actually. I expected to get it like a lot later, or maybe even not at all, because for a while there it was people were waiting a long time. But I did get it, and it looks great, and I'm looking forward to it. Whoa! Oh, thing's heavy. So let's see. And I noticed that like sometimes it's kind of funny. I notice when there are people who are like big Godzilla fans, but then they look at Gamera and they're like, oh well, haha, that's really cheap or whatever. And it's like, that's kind of funny that someone would say that, because some of these Gamera movies are not exactly all that far off, quality wise, from what Toho was putting out with Godzilla. So I don't know why the Gamera like snobbery thing happens. I think there's a lot in these Gamera movies that is good. Of course, everybody shouldn't. Well, maybe not everybody knows, but my favorite's Gauss, Gamera versus Gauss. I saw it when I was a little kid, loved it then, and I loved it now. And of course, that's the first one that I saw out of these Blu-rays when I got this. The same day, I was like, well, we're popping in that, because it's I think one of the best Gamera movies that there is. And of course, I have the nostalgia bias going on, but gosh, it's still great now. It is just a great movie now still, and it's fun. It's bizarre. They really knew what they were doing when they made it. So next, yeah, I'm not going to do a full tour of this Gamera thing and spend 20 minutes. Other people have done that. There's probably like a million videos out there of people who have already done that, and you may have probably already seen that from people who got it earlier. And I didn't really choose to get it really early. I got it sort of late anyway, so I'm surprised that it showed up at this time. So next, I will go into some of the. Well, first, actually, I want to talk about how this is the third anniversary, close to the third anniversary of the first broadcast of Kaijuvision. September 20th, 2017 was the first. That was when the first 2 episodes of the show were released, and it feels like that's been a really long time. Some people say the time really flies. For this, I don't think time really flew. I so much work put into it. It doesn't feel like it was a short time ago. It feels like it was a long time ago, actually, and maybe it just had to do with this year being the way it is. But those first 2 episodes were something I was really proud of. I mean, I'm proud of just about all the episodes of this show, and I thought that that the debut went well. It's just that considering the subject matter and how the audience is of this show is like a niche audience. It's like a niche audience within a niche audience, and I'm surprised that we got as many views as we did. But I'm really happy that it's the third anniversary now, and the show's come really far, and there are a lot of people who they first started watching it, and now it's so much different. It's moved to video, and there's a lot more going on with the topics and keeping hold of the issues. I mean, this has always been about issues and about the missions. Hi, Jonathan. Thank you. And this is such a important concept, such a big concept to try to put together, because this show has so many missions, whether it's supporting the alliance between the U.S. and Japan, letting people know about Japanese cultural connections in the movies, the political connections. I mean, these movies are in many ways inherently political from the beginning. There's politics even in movies that you wouldn't think there's politics going on. There is, because of the symbolism. And I love making historical connections to these movies. It's awesome. And and like episode 4 was about the War Crimes Tribunal, the Tokyo trials. And so I've been hitting controversial issues a lot ever since the show's inception. When I first started, though, I thought, well, I didn't think that I would get as much attention as I am now. I didn't think that I would get as many followers and whatever else on social media. I didn't think these things would be happening. Oh, hi, hello, Sean. Sean, and thank you to everybody. Especially Sean, that you're here right now. But thank you to everybody who donated to the show when Patreon was active. It helped recoup some of the equipment expenses, because a lot of equipment that goes along with this, especially with the video stuff now. But even back then, all those videos were, that was a lot of time and work and money. But yeah, thank you for coming on, and thank you for donating, Sean, and everybody else who donated, Kyoe, Robert, and I'm trying to think of everybody else. I'm trying to think of everybody. It's been a while since Patreon was active, and like this show is never really about the money anyway, or about fame. This was just about getting the message across, and that's what I think is most important. So like so let's get into something else. I looked at, I think it was like a week ago now that I got this. There we go. Well, at least the autofocus is working on. We can at least see that. So this is the latest, the 128th G-Fan magazine, and it shows you just how long this fanzine has been around. It's been a long time. There has been a lot of talk recently, in the past couple of days, regarding, let me find it, this article. But you know what? Everybody's talking about it, so I'm not going to talk about this one as much. So what instead of talking about this one that's at the back, instead I'm going to talk about this article that's at the front, very close to the front, page 5, in fact. So there we go. Yeah, this page right here. Yes. How G-Fest got canceled. So there's that. Because I was rather, reading it was a rather interesting thing, because I wasn't really sure what to make of it. It isn't exactly, I guess this is supposed to be the official account of this year's issues with G-Fest, but I really don't know. I'm really not sure, because it kind of left some stuff out. But here we go. So I did talk in a live, I don't remember which one it was, number 2 or 1, whichever one that I did the charity live stream for the COVID-19 disease and the coronavirus, and I said how, if you can't keep people safe, reasonably safe, then you shouldn't do the event, because it would be very bad to have someone actually get this horrible disease and then die of it as a result of being at the convention, and then people having to get emails and contacts saying, oh, if you were in contact with this person, or even breathed the air that they exhale, then you might have also gotten sick at G-Fest. And it's like, I really don't want to see that kind of nightmarish scenario. I don't think that'd be good press for the convention. I literally don't want to see people die. Like a lot of there are quite a few people at G-Fest, including me, who are disabled and not in the greatest of health. And I think that for people who are more vulnerable, I think especially that would have been a very scary thing to have to go and literally risk your life to go to a Godzilla convention. That's not good. You shouldn't have to. And for a while it was like, oh, well, what are we going to do with, how are we going to have microphones working? Because, people are holding the microphones and touching them and breathing into them when they talk. And so how are you supposed to even do that? And like, if they're even going to have a G-Fest next year, how are they going to fix this and make it so that it's safe and that you don't feel like you're gonna, something bad's gonna happen to you? So that was my position. I was like, if don't have it, if you're not gonna guarantee people's safety enough. And like I heard that, a lot of people who go to G-Fest, they get sick with something else anyway, even before the coronavirus thing happened. And I think that was mainly because of that horrific bathroom downstairs across from the ballrooms. You know where I'm talking about if you've been there. That place was, if they had it this year, if they had given G-Fest this year, that place would have been ground zero for COVID transmission for the entire Northeast Illinois area. And not clean, not good. And I didn't even, last time I was there, I didn't even use that downstairs bathroom. I went up to my room upstairs and I went to the bathroom up there. You know why? Because safety, and because I don't like getting sick. A lot of people don't like getting sick. Who does like getting sick? So that was my position. But this this article about this, yeah, exactly right, Sean. Like the public restrooms are the number one way, but then there's a lot of like handshaking and stuff like that. But I don't know if there's going to be much of that anymore. So this article though about how G-Fest got canceled, I didn't expect this article to talk about the tweets, the problematic tweets that were about from the G-Fest account about this kind of stuff. I didn't expect that, or the backlash about this to be covered. Obviously, that's an omission, but the thing is, the public relations aspect of this, it didn't go over very well with everybody, and not that everybody's going to agree on everything anyway, but. Well, okay. So though initial model projections predicted U.S. death tolls would top 2.2 million, those numbers were quickly revised downward as it became apparent that the highest risk population consisted of elderly people 70 and over with multiple pre-existing medical conditions. That was one sentence. The death rate for younger, healthy people eventually became known to be about the same as a typical flu, while COVID-19 impacted teens and under even less. All right. I think what some of this is doing is it's mixing susceptibility and how your body reacts to and fights off the disease, because those are two different things. So, back then when people were saying, younger people are less likely to die from it, that somehow morphed into, children are less likely to get it. And those are two different things. And I also, but yeah, this is really the kind of the same thing that we got from a lot of people, that it said, well, unless you're old or really sick, that's the only time you have to worry about this. Well, it's not. One of my friends who who watches the show, she probably got it and tested negative, and it was probably a false negative, and now she's having symptoms of heart disease. Like, seriously, this is a big deal. This can have long-term effects even on healthy people. Your lungs, your heart, your brain, like your muscles, like so much stuff that affects you long-term for the rest of your life. And but anyway, this is going back to the article. As the virus spread during March and April, governments adopted restrictive measures in an attempt to make sure healthcare systems would not be overwhelmed by COVID-19 patients. Many of the measures were aimed at preventing people from gathering in groups and abetting transmission of the disease. Even so, predictions of the course of the virus still varied widely. Well, March and April, I think by April, I think we knew what we were in for. At least I did. On May 5th, Illinois Governor Pritzker revealed his state's 5-phase plan for lifting anti-COVID restrictions. Illinois was divided into 4 regions, blah, blah, blah. Basically, Region 5 was what Rosemont was in, because the village of Rosemont is usually included with Chicago, sometimes not, though. Now, as it says here, it is included in the suburban Cook Country region. I think it's Cook County, but yeah. All regions were in phase 2 as of May 5th, blah, blah, blah. Pritzker himself was quoted as saying that Phase 5 might not happen until next summer of 2021. At that point, the writing was on the proverbial wall. Even if the Northeast region entered Phase 4 in the shortest possible time, there was no way that Phase 5 would begin in time for G-Fest to be staged. And yes, it says here, as it turned out, the Crowne Plaza O'Hare, the G-Fest venue, only began a limited reopening on July 12th, the day G-Fest was supposed to have ended. At press time, all regions in Illinois remain at Phase 4, and no convention activity has been allowed to take place, and the calendar of the Stevens Convention Center across the street from the Crowne Plaza is empty until late August. G-fans look forward to 2021 with the hope that COVID-19 will be but a bitter memory and G-Fest can proceed as usual, but after watching state governments impose restrictions that have devastated businesses and thrown tens of millions of people out of work, nothing seems certain at this point. Well, I didn't read the first couple paragraphs of this. This says there were plenty of speculative stories in the press. They were often contradictory, and much of the information about the virus was based on supposition. Supposition. What? Speculative stories? Okay. Yeah, I think that first paragraph that I read was probably the most difficult one that it's just kind of it's like having something stuck in your teeth and you're trying to get rid of it. And it's just, it doesn't really sit right. But I think the way that this, I mean, a lot of you have seen how this was handled publicly on social media, particularly Twitter and the G-Fest Twitter. It didn't go over very well with a lot of people because, and I understand wanting to hold the event and wanting it to still happen. And I understand why that's important to do that. But at the end of the day, you need to protect people who are going to be at this convention. And if you can't reasonably do that, then unfortunately, might be a good idea to not do it. I think the whole thing where that whole dismissive thing of it's people who are extremely old and it's people who have lots of pre-existing conditions and they're the only ones that need to really worry about it. I don't think so. That's been proven wrong over and over and over again. I mean, and like children can get it and then they get that inflammatory syndrome where like all their organs get inflamed. Like this is not anything to screw around with. And I think that maybe you need to reassess things or change where you're getting your news from, because it just seemed like there was too many bad choices being made regarding this. And does anybody think that G-Fest is going to happen next year? Personally, I don't know if G-Fest is going to happen next year. They can plan on it, and it's going to be at a better hotel, and that sounds great and everything. But at the same time, I don't know if we're going to be quite there yet. Maybe by next spring we'll be able to have a vaccine, but we're gonna be in for a hard winter, I think. And who knows what things are going to be like by the time January or July comes around. The other thing is, if you have a reservation at the Hyatt Regency O'Hare right now, you might just want to periodically check to see. You might just want to check on your reservation on the Hyatt website and actually see, did they cancel my reservation or not? And if the hotel cancels your reservation automatically, and either you get notification about it or you don't, but if they automatically just cancel everybody's reservation, I think we know if the event's going to happen or not. So that's going to be, it might be the first indication that of something actually happening, is that quite possibly, because they would just go through and everybody who was booked that weekend, they would just blanket, cut out all of it. So I was wondering if any of you had any questions, because this year has been really hectic, and I had a busy month this month, and I was keeping track of everything that was going on, but I wasn't quite up to date on necessarily everything. But I think that news is happening so fast, and everything else is happening so fast right now. It's hard to keep up, and I've tried to keep track of what's going on in the Godzilla world, and sometimes I go on Facebook, not very much. I usually just sift through Twitter and see what's on there and see what everybody's saying, and I think that G-Fest right now is just it's been a bad year for G-Fest and for the G-Fest account on Twitter for sure, but it's just it's a tough year for everybody, and there's so much, like even when I mention Twitter to people lately, they're like, oh my god, that is so toxic, I don't even want to be associated with it. And I feel your pain on that, and it just ends up being kind of nasty. And but I think really the stuff that's going on in the Godzilla fandom right now, it's an indication that it's a reflection of society in general in a lot of ways right now. Like, it's the same current events are affecting everybody this in different ways, and it's difficult right now. And then of course I think it's an election year. I think people are going to be more upset and difficult problems with in their lives anyway. People are on edge and nervous, and I think election year and the election season just lasts way too long, and there's a lot of fatigue within the population as a whole. A lot of fatigue and worry and anger, and it's just not really conducive. And I think not that I want them to actually do this, but I don't want them to actually release Godzilla versus Kong. I don't think now would be a good time. Definitely not. They keep delaying it. It's been delayed 3 times now. But my point here is that because this has been canceled so many times now and postponed, I guess, to a later date, there's kind of this angst in the Godzilla community that has developed because there's no movie and there's nothing new being released, and this Gamera set is really one of the big things that's been released this whole year that the Godzilla kaiju fandom can get into. And at the same time, though, they're movies that have been around a long time sometimes, and in some cases these movies have been around a long time. The first Gamera was 1965. So with that, it's not exactly something new. But I also, with the movie being delayed, I think it's caused some angst among kaiju fans and Godzilla fans, because they were wanting to see this movie. Originally, it was May 2020 that this thing was supposed to come out, and that would have been just 2 months or so before G-Fest would have happened. So we could have had people associated with that movie maybe show up to G-Fest. And that was the other thing. That really got me with G-Fest in general, was this year and the pushing to keep it going until the governor stopped it. And that was the guest aspect, the guests of honor particularly, because these are Japanese people, first of all, and so you have to deal with quarantines and restrictions that Japan has put on, and restrictions on international travel and requiring people to quarantine once they get in to Japan, back from Japan if guests of honor came here and went back. And you wouldn't have been able to guarantee any kind of safety for the dignitaries and guests of honor from Japan at all. That they'd have to get on an international flight. It would probably been one of those flights that's direct from Tokyo to Chicago, or At least I would hope, either Narita or Haneda to Chicago directly, and that's a long flight, and they're going to have to be on a plane with who knows how many people, and then they'd get off at O'Hare, and breathe everybody's air in there, and then they have to get to the hotel, which thankfully is a very short trip. But at the same time, you're just adding more instances where they could have been exposed to something. And if I think it would be, if G-Fest had somehow happened, like still happened this year, imagine if like, if a very popular and well-liked Japanese person who came here as our guest, imagine if they got sick, or like they could have started showing symptoms by the time they would have to go back home. And so what would have happened then? They could have gotten stuck here, like at one of the hospitals in Chicago, maybe, and put in the, who knows, put in the hospital, hospitalized, put in the ICU, put on a ventilator. Who knows what could have happened? Put in one of those iron lung machines, that like straps them into the bed, and then the bed like rotates in order to rotate all the fluid in their lungs around. I mean, this is, I'm not even trying to sound scary. I mean, this is what actually happens to people. And I can't imagine something like that happening to, just throwing it out there, somebody like Akira Takarada, or Shinji Higuchi, or anybody. And if you, that would have been a PR disaster, and it would have been a massive tragedy to a lot of people, and it would have been it would have exemplified the mismanagement and the lackadaisical attitude towards the virus. So thankfully G-Fest didn't happen, at least in my opinion. But I can't imagine having to take care of Japanese guests there, and a lot of them are older too, because they were associated with movies from the Showa or the Heisei era. And so if you keep adding all these different places that they could have gotten the virus, then it would have been a disaster. So I'm not really sure. I don't know what was really going through their minds when they were keeping G-Fest planned, because it's like, okay, even if the convention had happened, I would have hoped, and they probably might have even been kept because of quarantine restrictions and travel restrictions, but I would hope that no Japanese dignitaries would have come, just out of respect for their own safety. And I think that would have been a remarkably risky trip for them to make. But getting back to Godzilla versus Kong, though, when you have this delay going on with this movie for so long, some people are going to get angst, and they're going to get restless, because there's nothing new coming out, and it's like, oh gosh, everybody wants to see this movie. And in a way, I don't know, some people, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I'm almost dreading it coming out. I don't know why. I'm hopefully, I mean, like if they release it online, like online only, like streaming only, I imagine they could lose a whole lot of money they would have gotten otherwise if it was released in the theater. And even if it does get a release in theater later, it might not be as many, the ticket sales might not be as high as what they would have if this movie had been released in May 2020 and there was no coronavirus. Obviously this movie is expensive. It's a pretty expensive movie, and there's a lot of CGI, I'm sure, and a lot of action and all that. And so there's a lot of money and time that was spent on this movie. So just giving it an online streaming only release would be very bad as far as just how much money it would make. And so if you're not going to recoup anything comparatively, then you have no choice but to delay it, I think. Maybe I'm wrong about the revenue aspect of this and the profit stuff, but there's a lot that's going on with the movie industry right now, and like some people in Hollywood who were starting to make movies got the virus, and so they had to take a delay there. And it's very hard to schedule events and have them come off as you hope that they would. but problematic. I don't know if Jonathan, you're saying, as someone who teaches government, I absolutely agree. Election season is too long. Yeah, it's terribly long, in fact, and I don't really know why that's. Well, we know why. It's the money. I mean, the money is one reason why so many things are screwed up in this country. But the incentives for things like this are all out of whack. I've been going back and forth between whether I want to do an episode on the prophecies of Nostradamus or not. And I think it goes back to, am I going, can people who listen to the episode actually get this movie and watch it? Because that's part of the experience. You should be able to get movies. And when the seasons for the show came out, there were DVD guides that and other guides that said, here's how to get this or that movie. You buy it on this site, or you buy this version of this. There are multiple versions available, etc., so that you can get them all. And now there's more streaming now since 2017, 2018. There's more streaming options available for these Godzilla movies. But like some of these Toho productions that are non-Godzilla tokusatsu, stuff like Prophecies of Nostradamus, The Last War, movies like that, those are a bit more obscure and sometimes a bit harder to get a hold of. And Nostradamus is one of those ones that is very difficult to get a hold of. And I pause when there's the possibility that viewers aren't going to be able to get this. And it would be best if they did. It would be best if they didn't get it, so they'd be able to watch it and then listen to the episode or that. But now, I mean, Submersion of Japan was easier to get than this, and that was pretty difficult to get too. So I don't see Toho releasing this movie anytime soon either. They're not going to give a home release of Prophecies of Nostradamus, because the interest groups that were upset when the movie came out are just as, they exist today still, and there are still victims of the atomic bombings who are still alive. So they still have people to advocate for, and people's memories to advocate for. And so I don't think Toho's going to unban it, even though it was a self-ban. It's not like the government of Japan actually came out and banned it. Toho pulled it, and that's what happened. But I think it would be, I think it's a great movie. It's fantastic to watch. I love Japanese movies from the 70s period. They're all great that I've seen. They're fun, they're imaginative, they're filled with just wacky stories and great and fun special effects that have tons of fire in them and explosions and all that. So I think it's a great movie in that respect. I think it's, however, doing it right now, it's a depressing movie, I think, because of the whole end of the world aspect of this. But at the same time, I feel that it's something I want to cover, so I think I'm going to do it. But I wanted to wait a little while and see if there was any indication this year of this movie actually coming out somewhere that Americans would be able to buy it and be able to see it, because that's important, to be able to get movies that people are actually watching or can actually watch and view themselves. But instead, what we'll do is I'll just go through, and it'll be a lot like Submersion of Japan, where it's a chronological run through, and I make remarks as the movie goes, and then I'm not sure what the related topic will be. I probably have about 6 ideas for what to do for the related topic for Prophecies of Nostradamus, but it'll be a good one. I think it's good. And when was it? It was a few months ago. I read the entire book of the Prophecies of Nostradamus, as well as like his original prophecies, all the quatrains of all that. And I also read a number of letters that Nostradamus wrote to uh, local, important people, princes and those kind of people in Europe at the time, because he would often visit them and then regale them about how he predicts all these things, and then he would predict things for them, I guess, and would be sort of their predictive, thing. I mean, I don't know. We'll get to that later, but some of these letters, they were funny to read. Funny. Just I some of them I laughed out loud because of just the language, the way that he describes himself is interesting, and the way that he the way that he sells himself. That he had the hustle for sure. He really knew his business. But at the same time, I also read and I encourage you to read too. I encourage you to read the book about Nostradamus's prophecies and where the sources are, and because his prophecies have largely been sourced, and so they know exactly what books and what other sources Nostradamus used in order to make these predictions. And that's the problem, is you're going into the past in order to predict the future. So like predicting that more of the same, it was basically like more of the same will happen in the future. Well, that's not really all that hard to predict. More of the same in the future is actually pretty easy to predict. But a lot of there was I think three sources. There are three sources that a lot of his prophecies came from, like a huge number of them came from like the biggest source. And some of the prophecies, as I read them, they were repetitive, vague. Obviously predictions like this are going to be vague. Zach, you're saying, what's a prophet without some charisma? And yeah, it's an interesting kind of charisma now that we know more about, now that psychologists and other people on YouTube especially have, and authors of books have taught us more about narcissism. And so then when I look at the prophecies of Nostradamus, I'm like, whoa, okay. And it's interesting. I don't know if I would actually encourage anybody to actually read all these prophecies, but I guess if you want to, it's out there. But honestly, though, I don't know if I'd waste my time with it. I'm going to cover the prophecies that are the ones that everybody talks about. Like I'm going to cover those two. The ones about 9/11 and the the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, atomic bombings, stuff like that, where people were like, oh wow, he actually predicted this big thing and that big thing. And I'm going to talk about that because thankfully there was a book that was written within the past 20 years, I think maybe in the past 10 years. And it not only sources all of Nostradamus's prophecies, or a lot of them. Some of them they couldn't nail down a source, but the majority of them have been sourced now. But it also that book also covers how Nostradamus actually did his prophecies, how he formulated them, what the method was, and how pretty much it's BS. And I know that I think a lot of people love Nostradamus stuff just because of the novelty of it, let alone other aspects of it. I mean, it's just fun some of it's just fun to read, and it's neat to imagine a world in which there are prophets, but I don't know if there are any right now because, well, I seem to remember a Mad TV thing where oh darn, I can't remember the actress's name, but it was this woman, and she was dressed as this old lady, right? And she calls a psychic hotline, and and then she calls and they're like, and I think they were kind of doing the Miss Cleo thing on the other end. It's like, I will tell you a fortune. And then this um, then the old woman's like, were you working on September 10th? And and the fortune teller's like, yeah. Well, why didn't you, work? And then it went into that, and I thought it was pretty funny because nobody predicted that would happen. And it's like there have been plenty of big events in the past 4 years, especially, and it's like, well, it would have been nice to have a fortune teller actually predict some of this. Would have actually proven that they knew what they were doing. But it's definitely fun to at least talk about Nostradamus and to look at these prophecies and like their quatrains. As I said, they're like these 4-line little prophecies, and that's how they're divided too. Like sometimes it's 2 and 2, but usually it's one prophecy per quatrain, and so it's going like that. And it's so when you're reading that, it's important to understand that, because sometimes people take like the first 2 lines and they think that the other 2 lines in it is something else, and it's usually not. It's usually one prophecy in that. But reading about Nostradamus was very interesting, and there's always, especially ever since the 60s, I think, was when Nostradamus came back more into vogue, especially the 70s, late 60s and 70s. People were really fascinated by it. And I think people still are fascinated by it, as well as other odd occult, I don't know if it's occult, but whatever you would describe this genre as, I think it is interesting to think about, at least. But Prophecies of Nostradamus is a wonderful movie. It's so wild and crazy, and I'm looking forward to doing it. I think most of the time this year, I was looking at this movie and I was like, this movie's depressing in a way, and I'm not sure, with all the stuff that's going on in the world right now, I'm not sure if I want to cover this and actually do this, because it doesn't, whenever I do episodes on these movies, I'm watching the movie multiple times through, and then there's, at one point, one of those viewings is when I go through and actually write down everything that I'm going to say, because all these episodes are pre-written. All of it's pre-written, especially ever since the Shin Godzilla episode 37, and now we're on 57. 58 will be the next episode. But it's important to get that across. And so when I go through, I watch the entire movie, and then I pause, write, and then I pause again, and then write, and pause and write. And that process, it can take like a whole day writing, and sometimes it takes a couple days, just because I have so much to say and so much to write down. And then I can go through and write it and either type it out or edit. Typing is a little bit difficult for me, but when but some way or another, I'll be able to get all that across. But sometimes, the Submersion of Japan episode was huge. It was long. It had an interview with John LeMay. It had all kinds of the chronological run through of Submersion of Japan is brilliant. I absolutely love it, and the movie's brilliant too. It's one of my favorite movies I've ever seen in my life. And it's funny that I never knew that when I started this podcast that actually there would be so much interest, that I would have so much interest in the non-Godzilla movies, like movies like Dogora or Atragon or Submersion of Japan, especially. Like there's and especially like there are kaiju movies that are non-Godzilla, but then there's also toku movies that are completely no kaiju at all. But a lot of those are some of my favorite ones. I mean, I remember, I think John said that it was his favorite movie, Submersion of Japan was. And so I'm looking forward to it. And it's just, it is going to be a lot of work. And it's, I not only over prepare, but I overwrite, and my perfectionism gets in the way, and it really, it's not a hindrance, but it definitely makes things longer and bigger, and a lot more to cover. But I will get to it. But I think that I think this year there were a lot of issues that I wanted to cover that didn't really fit into a movie, and just like the last episode that I did, there aren't any movies that I know of in the Godzilla or Tokusatsu world that talk about that issue. So I just had to tackle the issue on its own separately. And there are sometimes where I'm going to have to do that, but I prefer to talk about the issues within the context of the movies, preferably, for sure. Let's see. Yeah, I think that one of the most important things this year is that I have taken enough time to concentrate on what's important, because this year has been very tough for me and a lot of other people. And people I know have had a very difficult year too. And I had a family member pass away, and it was really bad. And getting through that was difficult. And this year, so many people have gotten sick, and so many people have been through so much. And I feel really bad for what a lot of people have had to go through, because it's not easy. And I think a lot of people are under a lot of stress. And I know that I've seen plenty of messages of people who they put on social media, here, if you're having trouble, call this number, if you're, or do something. And I think if you have emotional, or if you're feeling like your mental health is just really bad, social media is probably one of the worst places to be on, I would think. And I think if you have that big of an issue that needs attention, definitely just unplug from this crap, unplug from all this stuff, and take care of it. See somebody, and take care of it as much as you can. It's just like your physical health, like if you're having a lot of problems with your physical health, you should see a doctor. You should do something about it. Try to get it fixed. And I think there are a lot of people that they don't treat mental health the same way like they do physical health, and that's unfortunate, because you should take action for both of those things. When I first looked at starting this show, I wondered about if talking about the issues would be worthwhile, and it most certainly has. It has been really good, and I think that if you're gonna know about Godzilla and Tokusatsu, you should know about the issues. And notice I said should know about the issues. I'm not saying you have to know about these things. You can go all your life without having to know about these things or knowing them at all. But Kaijuvision is here for you if you're interested in this kind of stuff. But the thing is, not everybody's going to be, but it is here for you. And I think that tackling these issues within a Tokusatsu and Godzilla / Kaiju format is worthwhile, and that it will. And this isn't about like lecturing you or like being some sort of authority on stuff. I think it's easy to learn about these issues if you have enough information in your head to be able to sort it out and give the proper context and be able to lay out the facts in a proper way, and to inform people rather than to act like you're some big cheese that knows everything, because I don't know everything. But at the same time, I did go to a pretty darn good school, and I got a pretty good degree. And I've studied politics and world affairs for a long time, and um, it's that has the education that I got served me very well, and I feel very comfortable tackling a lot of these issues. And some I didn't feel as comfortable, but I guess what, I went and I learned. I went to library and I read things and I looked at articles, and you once I felt that I had a good enough handle on things, then I'd be confident enough to go ahead and do it. And I wish that I had been able to do a lot more this year, but at the same time, I didn't want to overwork myself too much, and because I just didn't feel quite. I didn't feel like I was quite ready for it. I wanted to take things at my own pace, and my physical health hasn't been great this year, but I think it's actually better than last year, thankfully. But it's good to be able to take your time and be more deliberate. I think the breakneck pace of the first 37 episodes of the show, like releasing an episode a week, that was fast. But at the same time, those episodes were audio only, and then there was just a scenic video to go with the audio on YouTube, and you didn't see me and you didn't see anybody else. And I think it's important that we did get the video thing working, and because I really like being able to do these more in person, and I like the extra. I don't mind the extra work that goes along with it. I don't mind having to work with the technology to get this set up. It's not that bad, but I think it's important to not burn yourself out. And I think after the first season of the show, I could not help but feel a little bit burned out by the time G-Fest came around after 2017 was over and into July 2018. That was a very tough time for me, because I felt that I was just killing myself here, getting way too much, having way too much work, and it's hard to maintain that kind of a breakneck pace. And at the same time, there's been more preparation into what I've done ever since August of 2018. There's been more deliberation on the topics. There's been more research. There's been more work behind the scenes done, and so that's important to get across too. But I don't want to. I didn't want to get too burned out on this, because then I wouldn't enjoy it. And this month was busy, but I thought I'd do live and show up and say hi and see how people are doing, because that's good to just check in on you, and I'm glad that you're all here and that you're interested in keeping this going. And for those of you who have had a tough year, I can relate, and I think we still got 3 more months left in the year, and this year can't end soon enough, can it? I feel like this year has lasted 2 years so far, if not more, and that's why that's part of the reason why I think starting Kaijuvision, releasing episodes 3 years ago for Kaijuvision, that's one reason why I don't feel like it's been a short time. I feel like it's been a pretty long time. But I wanted to see also if any of you have any other questions or reflections on anything that's been done with the show so far. If there's anything that you'd like to see happen that isn't right now, and if there's anything else that I can do, and if there's anything else that that you'd like to see, there are still plenty more movies to be covered on the show. But at the same time, I think that the issues are possibly more important than covering the movies. I love talking about the issues, and I love talking about how all of these issues plug into things, but at the same time, I love just taking the issues on their own separately. Um, I think that serves people well as well. Um, I'm going to continue trying to get movies like Nostradamus out, and I wish that I could give all of you a website or an Amazon link or whatever in order to be able to uh, get these movies to you, so that you can see them, because that's important. I'd rather not cover a movie that people can't access. Um, but some of these movies, they are still considered rare movies. And I remember when the show began, I mean, some of the Godzilla movies were hard to get a hold of. Movies like Son of Godzilla on Amazon, there'd be somebody charging $150 for it or whatever the heck, and that's not access. That's not real access. That's not acceptable. That's just somebody fishing for a whole bunch of cash for a DVD disc, and um, I just don't think that's worthwhile. I don't want to make people have to go and buy something that's extremely expensive and just in order to watch a movie. So I think that is important to be able to get that. Zach is asking, have you ever considered doing an episode on Pulgasari in North Korea? Yes, I did. And it's funny that I have talked to people about that. I think I talked to Kevin Derendorf about that when I think it was either before or after the interview that I did with him at G-Fest in 2019, which that feels like it was 4 years ago. I think that would be a great movie to cover. And I think there are, I think once I exhaust more of the Toho options here, then I will start getting into other countries and other studios, and the movies they've been releasing. With that, and so like North Korea, and then South Korea, and then and also one movie that I just mentioned on social media. I didn't talk about it in any episodes, but there's a movie, I believe it was called The Tower, I believe, and it was it's from 2012, I think. It's a South Korean remake of that 1970s movie, The Towering Inferno, which is, the big building, a disaster movie, fire in a big building thing. And I watched that because I really love 70s disaster movies from the United States. And so I decided, I was like, oh, this should be fun. And it was a fun viewing. It had a lot of good effects going on in it, and it looked really cool. I really liked it, and I think that's awesome. I almost want to do more episodes on disaster movies, just because they're fun to watch, and they're to some people they're guilty pleasures, or to some people they're not guilty pleasures, and they just enjoy watching them just because they're so wacky and so different and interesting. And these disaster movies are pretty cool. I like them, and I really love how the South Korean movie business did that movie. You could tell that they had watched The Towering Inferno over and over and over again, and that they had respect for it. And because it's amazing to have The Towering Inferno come back as a South Korean movie in modern present day kind of industry, and I thought it was a very cool movie. Um, Zach is saying disaster movies from the 70s and kaiju movies share a lot of DNA. I was attracted to both as a kid for similar reasons, I think. Yeah, yeah. And just recently, I was sort of binge watching some of them. I saw movies like oh The Swarm, like the one with the one with the killer bees, and they cause all these disasters. They cause train wrecks and nuclear plant meltdowns and all this ridiculousness. And I even though I understand the guy that made a lot of those movies was a hard person to work with, but at the same time, you'd almost expect it, considering considering how these went. But movies like the Towering Inferno, love that. Earthquake. If you ever have a chance to see 1974 movie Earthquake, see that. That's great too. I'm blanking on his name. The guy that Irwin Allen. I didn't look it up. I was about to look it up. I remembered it. Irwin Allen. He did The Swarm. He did Earthquake. He did a lot of those disaster movies. He did Poseidon Adventure. He was a tough guy. He really did a lot of those movies, a lot of the work. He wrote. He financed some of them, and some of these movies were expensive to make too. But he was really dedicated to making these great disaster movies, and it would have been interesting during the 1970s to actually have lived during that time and actually seen movies like this in the theater, because it would have been pretty cool. I think also I would have loved to experience the burnout that the audiences had at the time, where they kept seeing all of these disaster movies and they kept getting more and more ridiculous and they kept getting sillier. And then then the 80s rolled around and they made Airplane, and I would have, people laugh at that movie to this day, but that movie would have absolutely just killed me laughing if I had actually been alive at the time, seen all of those airport movies and other disaster movies, and then seen the spoof, like to end all spoofs almost. Like it's such a good spoof of those movies that it was very smart. That movie was very smart, and I would have loved to have just seen all those disaster movies, got burned out from them, and then gotten sick of the formula, and then then turn around and seen Airplane. I think that would have been hilarious, especially to have like seen Airplane in the theater with an audience. I think that would have been absolutely hilarious. But I love those movies. I love the airport movies, and I love all those other movies. They're fun. And I think it was partially because of Submersion of Japan. When I was doing that episode, I sort of binge watched a lot of those disaster movies over again, and they were good, fun to watch, and just neat special effects. Really fun. But yeah, I think there's a good connection between those and between the kaiju movies and 70s disaster movies. I wish that the U.S. would start making more of these disaster movies again, at least sort of the classic versions of them, and try to be a little bit like the 70s movies were. I don't know if that's asking too much, but now it's just, I think there's so much CGI that it's just, I've kind of had enough of people looking at CGI and not reacting the way that they should. And I know it's hard for actors to do that, but it's like, okay, at least give them an idea of what they're looking at. But because I think The Tower is a good movie from South Korea. I think they did a really good job. And I wish that the United States would release more of these movies. I wish they would, and make something different. But right now we're really into what do they call it? All of these movies like 1984, and Man in the High Castle. There are a lot of these movies that are out now. Dystopian, dystopian fiction, and that kind of stuff. And now there's so much dystopian fiction that it's almost like that's almost becoming a parody of itself. And maybe somebody should make a parody of those movies. That'd be interesting. But I'd love to see America releasing more like classic style disaster movies, like what the South Koreans were able to do with that. I thought it was fun. Well, I think unless you don't have any more questions, I think I'll do the last thing that I wanted to cover for the show because it's important, and that is the new Prime Minister of Japan. And so I want to talk about that for a little while because we've had Prime Minister Abe. He resigned. He was the longest serving Japanese prime minister in post-war history, and he was in office for a long time. And it's hard to believe that the Abe era has finally ended because it's been just such a long period of time. So I want to talk a little bit about that and go through maybe an article or two about it to be able to really appreciate it. And one thing that is interesting that I saw about Yoshihide Suga, I'll start out with this fun little factoid here about him. He actually, there's a man named Bill Granger who is the owner of the Bill's restaurant chain, and he said that he felt he had found a kindred spirit in Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga after Suga said that he eats Bill's famous ricotta hotcakes for breakfast 3 or 4 days a week. And so that there's this connection here trying to humanize the new Prime Minister of Japan. And I was like, I don't think I've heard of ricotta hotcakes before, but I don't think that I had actually knew what they were, and I've never tasted them before. But it is let's see, well, there was even a 1 1/3 cup ricotta cheese, 3/4 cup of milk, 4 eggs, whites and yolks separated, 1 cup flour, 1 teaspoon baking powder, pinch of salt, and unsalted butter or cooking spray. And so you are able to make pancakes out of that, and so you have the ricotta cheese that's mixed into the pancakes, and it sounds actually really good. And I almost want to make them myself now, just to learn a little bit more about it. And it sounds good, but I mean, I love trying different kinds of food and different kinds of food anyway. I think that's pretty cool. So he is Yoshihide Suga is Japan's 99th prime minister. I did not know that they were this close to 100 prime ministers now. A lot, and like when one of the viewers / listeners of the show asked me, what was it? How much do you think is going to change? And right off the bat, I knew that there weren't that many things that were going to change. There's going to be a lot of carryover from the Abe era into the Suga era. I mean, however long he lasts. Sometimes sometimes the Japanese go through prime ministers pretty quickly. It's nothing like Italy, but it is a little bit like that. We'll see how long Suga holds on. But there are some things that are different about Prime Minister Suga that I think are interesting, though. When Suga came into office, he said a lot of stuff was going to stay the same right off the bat, but Suga's origins are different than Abe, because Abe, his family was in power in Japan. They had power for a long time, and not to mention Abe's grandfather, who was in power for a while in Japan. But Suga does not come from a from a position that Abe did, and they keep calling him a self-made man, and I think that's pretty cool. He became a Diet member only in 1996, so it's not really all that long ago, considering his age and how long some people have been in the Diet in Japan. But he's pragmatic, and he is not as much about ideology as Abe is either. And one of the first things I read actually was that even though he's a member of the Liberal Democratic Party, he's not a member of any of the factions within it, because there's like a nationalist faction, there's a more moderate faction. There are different factions because the LDP is so big. And so there's going to be less of the kind of a nationalism stuff, I think, than what Abe was doing. I don't know if I'm not going to give too much of an opinion on if I think that's great or not, but I mean, I don't think that reason why Abe was not able to get the Constitution amended, the Article 9 amendment through, was because the Japanese people just aren't there yet. They just aren't at the same place that he was. And so that there's more of that pragmatism coming in with Prime Minister Suga, and so less ideology and more pragmatism. And so there's that. Another thing that's important that I've known about this issue for years, and that was the deterioration of rural areas of Japan and how there needs to be something done about it. And like, this has been going on in America too, like the whole thing with rural America, kind of dying and going through all of these, pretty big problems. And I think that I think that politicians have a duty to do something about that, and to try to do as much as they can to revitalize rural areas and keep them from just because there's nothing happening in these places. There's not much opportunity, and in Japan especially, a lot of people have been moving into cities, Tokyo, Osaka especially. So that's important too. And I hope that the new prime minister is able to do something about that that's substantive. The thing with the phone bills came up very instantly as soon as Suga was mentioned, and he's more of like a problem solver, and he asked one of his ministers in the cabinet to lower the fees on phone bills in Japan, and that's something that it strikes me as odd and interesting, but at the same time, that's actually pretty cool to do. Like I can't really imagine a politician in America being like, oh, we need to lower people's phone bills. But that's another thing besides revitalizing rural areas. That's another thing that he's doing. That's kind of a problem solving angle regarding average people. And I think that's pretty cool too. And so, that's interesting. And I think that's pretty cool too. And we'll see how much he's actually able to do from his agenda and how much he's not. But this guy, he's been behind the scenes. He's not a big boisterous individual, and he's quite a bit different from Abe, and he's just a different thing. He's not flamboyant, and he's not as much of a showman, but at the same time, it might be good to have someone in office who is more relatable and who can do some more things for the average citizen. Um, and some prime ministers, some prime ministers in Japan, they haven't been part of a faction in the LDP, but some of them have, and Abe certainly was. And one of the first things that Abe did as soon as he left office was to visit the Yasukuni Shrine, which is, kind of like a nationalist thing to do typically, especially if you're a politician, because, there's always going to be news in the newspapers if a prime minister or former prime minister goes and visits the Yasukuni Shrine, because that's kind of a that's been talked about before. I believe it was the episode on Terror of Mechagodzilla where I talked about the Yasukuni Shrine. But I wish all the best to the new prime minister, and I hope that he will be able to find ways to help people in Japan and to move things forward. He has a lot on his plate, a lot, and I think especially the number one thing that he has got to deal with is the economy. The economy is always going to be the biggest thing, whether it's trying to manage tax increases, the out of control spending, trade, and also like rural areas deteriorating. There is a lot that's going on in Japan right now that needs attention. And as far as economics, there's really not a lot that he can do. They have a limited set of tools that they have to work through this. And I really wish that they could do something more, but in a lot of ways they're just kind of stuck. And in a lot of ways they have like the budget. It's baked in because there are so many elderly people that they have to take care of. And how are you going to do all that? But I think that they have a lot on their plate. It doesn't matter who the prime minister is. They got a lot of problems, and it's good that we're getting a fresh pair of eyes, I think, to look at this. But I think a lot of the Abenomics, I think a lot of that is going to stay. A lot of that's going to stay in effect, and there's not much that they can do to change the trajectory of the economy. It's just that's just the way it is, and I'm not really sure what more they can do. But I wish everybody in Japan luck, and I wish that they all get things taken care of as much as they can. But it's hard. It's very hard. But I think I did want to talk about that because getting a new prime minister in Japan, that's not Abe. It's been a long time. I think 7 years at least that Abe was in with the second term. It's a long time for a prime minister to serve, and so it's important that I make note of that. And so I wanted to get that. I did want to get that in and talk about that before I finish here. But if no one has any other questions, I think I'm just going to end it here and tell you all that it's been a good year for the show, regardless of how this year has been for so many people. It's really tough. This year's been tough. And it's been stressful, and it's been difficult for a lot of people. And I hope that everybody stays. I hope that you all stay safe, and that I hope that you're able to move on, because there's nothing I want more than to move on from this year and get it over with, and get people vaccinated and get people protected, because we'd like to get back to our lives. We'd like to get back to our normal lives as much as possible, as quickly as possible, I think. And so I will let you guys go, and I hope that you all have a safe time. And there will be another episode or two next month, and I'm looking forward to that too. And if you haven't gotten the Gamera set, I hope that you do. because it seems very impressive. I haven't seen every one of the movies yet, but it is an impressive thing. I don't know if they needed to go quite as crazy with the box and the extra stuff, but um, go ahead, go ahead, I guess. And so it was good to see all of you, and take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.